Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Pointless Top 10, a show where we make top 10 lists out of pointless things. Where are we flying by this pointless statue in Booty Bay? Because inside pointless things are treasure. Let's begin. 10. Number 10 is this house in the Stone Talon Mountains, and it's about as far northwest as you can go in the Stone Talon Mountains. It's a little bit west and north of Stone Talon Peak, more west than north, and it's just randomly out there in the open. This is a very random place for a house. It's this random troll hut, and there's just nothing else around. There's a cauldron, there's some animals hopping around, there's some trees, and that's really it. It looks like it's an abandoned hut, although the cauldron's still bubbling, so I don't know if they left the cauldron on. It's like leaving your oven on or something. Dude's gonna come back like, I left the cauldron on, not again. But realistically, this is probably where they were going to add some sort of content to the game in Stone Talon Mountains, and then they just never got to it, or it just got abandoned, and they're like, all right, whatever, just leave it there. And now it's just some random troll hut in the middle of nowhere. And I actually never knew this thing existed until this video, and maybe that's how you are too. But now, you know. And that's number 10. 9. Number 9 is a home in the Barrens above the Wailing Caverns, and this actually used to be a quest hub. I don't believe it is anymore, but Fala Sagewind is the person that lives here, and she is a Tauren just chilling up in the mountains above the Wailing Caverns, having a great view. You could look out and see everything from up here. But this used to be the quest for the Glowing Shard, and I believe this was a Horde-only quest, so Alliance people are probably like, and then Horde people are like, dude, I remember that. And fun fact, there's actually a Hunter Sagewind in Thunderbluff, so it is very likely that Fala Sagewind and Hunter Sagewind are related in some way, so that's pretty cool. But overall, this was one of those houses that always stood out to me as one of the houses in the middle of nowhere, because I remember way back in the day trying to find this place, and I was like, where am I supposed to take this? And then you realize, like, wow, you have to, like, literally climb a mountain, and you get to the top of it, and then there's just some little Tauren house. And you're like, oh, wow. And you get a nice view over the entire landscape, and you're like, dude, this is amazing. And that's why I really love that quest, is they made you go up a mountain, and then you're annoyed. You're like, oh, this sucks. This is dumb. Why do I have to do this? Then you get to the top, and you just get that scenic view, and you're like, dude, nice. And then someone says a Chuck Norris joke and ruins the immersion because it's 2005. So that's why this is number 9. 8. Number 8 is the Hayward Fishery, and this one's got some interesting lore in it, so let me read you a bit here from Wowpedia. Hayward Fishery was formerly a small single island prior to the Cataclysm. It is now a tiny archipelago off the coast of southwestern Gilneas, which houses an abandoned fishing business that was run by the Hayward brothers, Sebastian, Ron, Trent, Walt, and Tim Hayward. The brothers were trying to repair one of their ships with the help of young Gilnean adventurers so they can escape, while at the same time being attacked by Forsaken castaways. Oddly enough, despite the rest of the Duskhaven area having been sunken by the Cataclysm, the fishery is all and well, having not even been touched. Ironically, the Haywards could have stood a chance at remaining at their home rather than evacuating like the others. So this is one of those weird stories where if they would have just stayed where they were, they would have been fine, you know what I mean? But obviously hindsight's 2020. They go off, and they're probably dead now, but who knows? There's also a theory that Deathstalker Hayward is related to them, and he's a Forsaken Deathstalker located in New Agamond in the Howling Fjord. But overall, as an abandoned house, this place is also pretty cool, right? There's a bunch of fishing gear all over. There's fishing lures, fishing poles, fishing boats. It just has a cool aesthetic to it, and you know how much I love fishing, so that also played into it, but I just think this is a cool place. It's got a cool history, and that's why it's number 8. 7. Number 7 is Newman's Landing. I actually stumbled across this place when I was doing my level 1 hardcore run across the world challenge, which I'll put a link to up above, but it's a small area found on the western coast of Dunmorrow, just west of Coldridge Valley. It holds a dilapidated human building and a dock. At the building, there is alcohol, several boxes of grain, some bone piles, and a sign that says Newman's Landing. In patch 3.02, the goblin named High Admiral Shelley Jorick was added to the dock, along with 2 Booty Bay bruisers, but they were removed in Legion. Now, there's actually a lot of weird theories behind Newman's Landing, so there's a few weird things happening. One is, trying to fish at Newman's Landing used to give the air, there are no fish here, but after patch 3.09, it is possible to fish there. originally, dying in Newman's Landing or just north of it would have the players reappear in Menethil Harbor. Dying south of it would cause one to respawn in Sentinel Hill in Westfall. And originally, shift-clicking the name of a character standing in Newman's Landing would show them in the location unknown. In the guild roster, the location field would be a blank space. Then, after researching a bit more, I found somebody on Reddit saying before your character is teleported to the new character starting zone, that's where the characters spawn. Back when people's internet was slower, you could see bodies spawn there for a fraction of a second before being teleported whenever someone made a new character. Thus, it was New Man's Landing, because it's somewhere where new men were spawning. But then someone else was like, no, that's a rumor. Here's a quote from Sam Lantinga, who was a original game engineer on World of Warcraft, and they said, I think that might have been the 0 point on that continent. We had a bug where if a player died when crossing a zone boundary between physical servers, that they would be loaded with a 0 position. We would quickly fix them up, but they would already be in the world at that point, and well, ghosts abound. So whatever the case may be, this house is still a pretty cool house in the middle of nowhere, and it has a ton of history, a bunch of theories and rumors, and a whole bunch of stuff, and that's why it's number 7. 6. Number 6 is this dwarf house / farm on the eastern coast of the Arathi Highlands. This used to be a place where there was absolutely nothing. There was just a dwarf, maybe 2 dwarves, just some animals, and no quests or anything. It was just here. And so some people think it was just here for roleplay reasons, or it was supposed to be a thing and it never happened, but either way, it's just a cool little place. But now, they've actually added Grimmy, and Grimmy is the quest NPC for the Waste of Time cosmetic. It's just a belt cosmetic, and it's a clock because you've wasted your time. There's like 40-something things you have to do. It really is a waste of time, but it is weird going to this place after being like, it's this calm, relaxing dwarf farm in the middle of nowhere. And now it's just this gnome skeleton that's like, hoo-hoo, greetings. In fact, he has a few quotes. He says, oh my, visitors, and I haven't a thing to wear. And I would treat you to a smile and a toast, but alas, I have neither skin nor ale. And don't hesitate to make yourselves at home. So Grimmy's a little weird, and he was actually added in Battle for Azeroth, so this isn't that old of an addition to the game. But I mean, I'm a sucker for Arathi Highlands. I always loved Arathi Highlands, one of my favorite zones, and so having a house in the middle of nowhere in one of my favorite zones, I was like, this one's got to be on the list, especially now with this weird-ass gnome skeleton. And so that's why it's number 6. 5. Number 5 is this gnome house in the ruined reaches of Azshara, kind of near Durothar. And this one's kind of a crazy one, because Bingham Gadget Spring is here, and there's a quest that Hobart Grapplehammer sends you on to go deal with Bingham and his fellow gnomes that are a thorn in the side of the local goblins. So you go there, he sends explosive sheep at you, and all the gnomes try to fight you. It's a great time. But there's actually some crazy Gadget Spring lore. So, there used to be his mother and father in this building, Bleemo Gadget Spring and Juby Gadget Spring. And if you go into this house that Bingham Gadget Spring's in now, you'll find a purchase order receipt for a giant-sized laxative that was ordered to retrieve his father, Bleemo. So the receipt says, Mrs. Gadget Spring, the industrial-strength laxative agent you requested is enclosed. My condolences on the fate of Mr. Bleemo Gadget Spring. I don't know why you didn't order a vomit-inducing agent. Good luck on your endeavors. So Juby, after Bleemo was eaten by a cliffwalker, decided to order a super laxative, give it to the cliffwalker, and hope the cliffwalker just popped them out. But that never happened. He was dead. We've never seen him again, and that cliffwalker probably had a terrible time. And so for all these wacky stories and all this stuff, this is number 5. 4. Number 4 is a house in Stormheim, west of the Agrimar's Vault, and it is owned by Tigrid the Charmer, that is the enchantress here, and you would have to go here for enchanting stuff back in Legion, but she probably doesn't get that much business anymore, and so it's just a random Stormheim house in the middle of nowhere. But this is a really cool house, which is why I put it so high up on the list. It's got really nice aesthetic. There's candles, there's books laying around, there's a fireplace, and just a bunch of little knickknacks here and there, and just there's just a lot of cool things all around, which is, you know, you would expect that from somebody that's really into enchanting and all that, right? You would have a bunch of magical stuff laying around, but it's just, for being this old rundown place in the mountains, for being a house in the middle of nowhere in the mountains, it's got a very cozy aesthetic to it. And so it doesn't have crazy lore like some of the other houses, but it's a very nice location. There's rams and birds all over. There's even a bird that like sits on top of the entrance to the house. It's very nice. It's charming. It's quaint. And because of that, I put it at number 4. 3. Number 3 is a cozy Tauren house up in the mountains of Mulgore and Feralus. And I guess a little bit of Thousand Needles. It's more that you can see Thousand Needles from here, not so much that's in it, but it's just something that I never knew was in the game, and it's just a great, cozy aesthetic place. Like, you got the Tauren house, you got the big totem pole, you got a canoe, you have some wind chimes, like, up in the tree, and it looks like there's a dead Kodo. I don't know if maybe he came up here and there's a Kodo and he, like, killed it, because there's arrows in the Kodo, so, I mean, something happened there, and now he's, like, decorating the Kodo. Like, I have no idea, but this dude was determined, right? This guy was like, I'm going to go up here and I'm going to make my getaway house to escape from reality, go up into the mountains. He's probably going to smoke that Tauren weed that they make you smoke as part of that quest chain to get heritage armor. Just look out over the landscape and be like, man, life's good. And now we have no idea who lives here or where this Tauren is or anything. It's just a random abandoned house up in the mountains, but it's fantastic. I love this place. I'm glad I found it because I never knew it existed. And it's one of those places that has no lore, and yet so much lore. Damn. That's why it's number 3. 2. Number 2 are the houses in the Caverns of Time. And ever since I saw these houses in this path years ago, I knew I wanted to do something with them, right? I was like, these are just so cool, and they can be glanced over pretty easily because you're walking through the tunnels to get to the Caverns of Time. You're just like, there's some stuff all around, whatever, but I think it's so cool that you see these different types of houses just merged into the wall, or houses that you can actually walk into, and it's almost like you're going through this different time dimension. Like you're walking through a portal into a different time. And then you look up into the sky and you see another house, but with like floating rocks and stars in the background. It's just, it really makes you feel like you're walking through time. And that's what I enjoy most about these houses. Like they may not be, they may not be the coolest houses, they may not be the most aesthetic houses, but it's a variety of houses just scattered throughout the Caverns of Time entrance and making you feel like you really are walking through time. And for those reasons, I decided to put them at number 2. 1. And number 1 are the underwater gnome houses in Tanaris. And these actually have a crazy history where they were in the game way back in Alpha, and then they were moved down along the coast for the Encourage opening quest. And then after that, they kind of were just useless, and they were just sitting under the water after Cataclysm. And then as of Legion, they made these a part of the engineering quest chain. So they've changed what they are throughout history, but I think these really represent why it's so much fun to find random stuff out in the middle of nowhere, right? Like these random houses, and it's because, they've had their purposes changed over time. But the main thing is people find these and they think they found some sort of hidden treasure. And in a way they have. And I think it's really cool to explore a world, and then when you find something that you think nobody else has found, or even if you find something someone else has found but you can figure out a different meaning for it, or something about it, it really just adds to the history and the fun and the richness of the world. That may sound like a bunch of fluff words, but I think you understand what I'm saying. And so that's why these are number 1. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this episode of Pointless Top 10. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. If you want some more Pointless Top 10s, you can check out last week's, which was Pointless Top 10 Turtles, and before that we had Pointless Top 10 Dungeon Entrances, so go check those out. Okay? Okay. See ya!